of fate.
This is the way. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Tells me when you'll remember this.
Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined by my good friend / my co-host, Devin, alongside Mr. Mike Thomas, joining us back for week 4 of The Last of Us. You can find his work over on the Chatter After, Collider, and the Amateur Otaku podcast. And today we're going to be sharing our views and insights on the 4th episode of HBO's original series, The Last of Us, which is titled, Please Hold My Hand. And before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at Film Optix, or you can email us at filmoptix, that is optics with an X, at gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Gentlemen, Mr. Mike, it's glad to have you back. We had a sense of what Lost was last week because you weren't with us. So we were very...
Oh, jeez.
How's your week been?
It has been great. I actually just got done covering Anime Milwaukee for the first time here in Wisconsin. So that was a fun convention. Got to meet the voice actors for Zeke and Ymir for the Attack on Titan dub. So yeah, I had a blast.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I think we have something similar here in Nashville, but it's like, it's kind of like their own little Comic-Con thing. I never go because I don't know. It's just not my, if I want to go to Comic-Con, I'm going to go to the Comic-Con, like San Diego, New York, something like, you know what? I'll visit you in Wisconsin next time you guys have that. We'll have a ball. We'll have a blast. Super low key.
I want you to remember, though, that that's February in Wisconsin. Are you sure you want to do that? It was like 2 degrees.
That's a valid point.
I'm from Northeast Ohio. I can handle anything.
I think Nashville made you go soft and warm.
No, sir. Down here, it is like last week, it was cold for 2 days. And they closed school because it was cold. There was like a little bit of ice. Like kindergarten schools, they have to close because if they don't have water, then you have to send those kids home. But like everyone else, they just had like, I think it was Tuesday and Wednesday off. And I was like, I mean, they're like, it's snowing outside. I look outside, not a speck of snow. There's like a little bit of ice here and there, but Nashville is crazy. And I don't want to get into that because today, again, we're here talking about The Last of Us. Devin, how have you been and what have you been watching?
Yeah, I had COVID, unfortunately, over the weekend, so haven't been watching much. I've been playing some games here and there, though. Just keep my mind off things, stay active a little bit, not just sink into the couch where you can't really breathe much. But I made a decision today, a very important decision. I've pre-ordered Hogwarts Legacy. I've been convinced. These reviews pouring in, I think the lowest I saw was an 8. Like all these videos, it just looks so fun. I just did it.
I am so excited. Devin, yeah, I remember out of all of our friends, Mike, Devin was like the one person who didn't pre-order it. He's like, I'll see, we'll see how it goes.
It was a wait and see type thing.
Yeah, but fair enough, because I mean,
Yeah.
We also got Gotham Knights, and we all know how that went.
Hogwarts Legacy is kind of weird too, because like I swear each trailer I've seen for that game makes it look like a different game. And so I was really concerned on how that was going to turn out. And it's like, 8 and 9, it's cool. Good to know.
I saw a little bit of the combat today. Devin sent me a video and I was enthralled. I'm like, this looks amazing. It looks so fluid. I already, I signed into my Pottermore account just to make sure everything's already set up. Slytherin, 100%. It's been that way for a while.
So that stuff actually transfers into the game?
Yeah. It's supposed to transfer at your Hogwarts house, supposedly. So we'll just have to figure out how it goes. I don't know. But it is also Steam Deck ready, which is awesome. I'm very excited to try it on the Steam Deck. and on my PC. So that's awesome. But Mike, really quick, what have you been watching outside of The Last of Us?
Ooh, outside of The Last of Us, The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2, which is awesome. I think the last few episodes of the season, because they've been dropping them in like episodes of 3 batches, I think that drops this week. And I've just been trying to get through Chainsaw Man. I kind of fell off when it was airing, so the dub's completely done. I'm trying to get through that show. And it's wild, I'll just say.
It's wild. Yeah, I know what you mean. I already kind of told Devin this, but I have finished season 1 of The White Lotus. It is fantastic. Armand. But yeah, it was just a very attractive show. Like, just when it came to literally the set pieces, the production design, I was like, I want to go to Hawaii so bad now.
I think they said like Hawaii like travel sales went up like 300% after that first season.
I imagine the same for season 2 with Italy.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I got to start that.
That went up too.
My gosh, that is insane. But yeah, I'm very excited to start season 2.
I want season 3 to be like Arkansas or something, just the most random place they can think of.
Ohio.
Yes. We need it's already a meme.
Yeah. Arkansas. Ohio would be really interesting, honestly. Like, we just live, if you don't live in Columbus, Cincinnati, or Cleveland, it's like just farm town and all in between. But yeah, I've been watching White Lotus. I've been re-catching up with Velma, because I do plan on doing a review here on the show for it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Trying to wait for the last 2 episodes to come out so I can properly evaluate it. I'm like maybe the 1% that didn't hate watch it, but hey, it is what it is. So yeah, as we kind of wind down here from our housekeeping, we are going to be getting into The Last of Us episode 4. The way that this is going to break down for anyone who is new here to the show, welcome first and foremost. We usually get into our initial reactions first, which is our non-spoiler section. Then we're going to hit our spoilers, and then that'll kind of fall into our trivia for episode 4, which will contain a lot of spoilers as well. And we'll let you guys know before we hit our spoiler section. Then we're going to give our final thoughts and our ratings, and then we will close out. So without further ado, we'll be right back after this introduction to The Last of Us episode 4. And we are back with our The Last of Us episode 4. Again, that is titled Please Hold My Hand. So we're just going to dive straight on in, give our initial reactions here. So I will pass it over to Mike so he can give his initial reactions. Then I'll go to Devin, and then I will close out. So Mr. Michael Thomas, what did you think of this episode?
This was a very good episode of The Last of Us. It is much shorter than I think we're accustomed to at this point with the show. I think it clocked in at like 45 minutes or so, which is vastly different from last week and in that first episode. So it just kind of felt like a more traditional form of storytelling in a way, right? Like we're with Joel, we're with Ellie. We're technically cutting back to Joel and Ellie after our brief detour with Bill and Frank. And it was just really cool to get those two characters playing off of each other for like the first time, essentially, right? Without Tess. We didn't get a ton of that in the first 3 episodes. So I thought their dynamic was great. It just kind of reinforces what I love about Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal in these roles. And I love how this episode plays around with themes and ideas from the game, but reinterprets them in a way that I really enjoy the setup and where it's going to go, especially with Sam and Henry going forward into next week. So I really dig how last week was basically like an original story, and in this one, they're getting a little more loose and free with it compared to the straight, shot for shot, word for word stuff that we got in the first couple.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there for sure. So, Mr. Devin, what are your initial reactions of this week's episode?
Yeah, coming off of last week, it feels like just an emotional damage occurred last week that we're also recovering from. So this one, while there was definitely some emotion to be had, I think it was definitely a bit on the lower side, which is good. A nice palate cleanser overall, and overall just a very, very solid episode. This one gave me the most deja vu from the video game, I would say, because of the couple scenes that were just kind of shot for shot straight from the game. We can discuss later, but yeah, definitely a good episode. Just building that relationship between Bella and Pedro. That's really all it's about, and we're really getting somewhere with that, which is very exciting for the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, man. It has been a wild ride so far, and as far as my initial reactions for episode 4, I'm pretty much in agreement with you guys. Like, it's a shorter episode for sure, but like Mike said, we finally get to see Joel and Ellie finally play off of each other. We thought last week was going to be, the beginning of their relationship flourishing, but we took a bit of a detour, but it all came full circle. And, I can't really say we went off track for a while, but it's nice to finally see Bella and Pedro kind of just riff off of each other. We see it a lot in this episode. Like Devin said, there is a lot of, it definitely gave me a lot of the most deja vu in this episode because, I'm just playing, those cutscenes over in my head. And from last week, I actually thought that they weren't going to do this specific scene when they're in the car and Ellie has a magazine. Because I mentioned it last week. I was like, oh man, it would have been cool to see that. And then they surprised us that like right off the bat with this episode. But we're finally getting into, we've seen the damage of what the infected can do. And this is more so I would say episode 3 and 4, especially 4 going forward will be, for a while will be, not just the infected are an enemy type, but you can see how humanity has just spiraled out of control. Like, you have to watch out for your own kind in this world. This isn't a, kumbaya, like, hey, let's all stick together. We're all going to get through this. It's like, no, people are ruthless. They will kill, they will lie, they will pretty much do anything that you can think of in the worst way possible. And I like how we're finally starting to get, some of these rebellions or rebel groups who claim that, they're better than Fedra, but then it kind of turns out that they're not so different after all. They just want to seize power. But we get a lot of new characters in this episode as well. And I'll save a little bit of that for the spoiler section. But overall, I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. I texted my mom, asked her if she liked it. She was like, oh my gosh, I loved it so much. But, we finally get the puns. The pun book is back. And it's deja vu. But again, these are somewhat of the same scenes playing out. May not be necessarily word for word. In this case, it kind of is for certain things, but it also mixes it up. And I'm interested to see where episode 5 is going to go, which we actually got a little bit of news stating that episode 5 of The Last of Us is actually going to debut on Friday, February 10th, before the Super Bowl, which I think is a very smart move for HBO, especially for something like this. On a Friday night, everyone can kind of unwind. You have Friday and Saturday to watch it, and then you can just go watch the Super Bowl on Sunday.
The power of Rihanna.
Yes.
Right. The power of Rihanna. And I'm hoping they do the same thing for the Oscars.
I don't think they're worried about the Oscars view count at this point.
Yeah. Hey, if Will Smith's going to be there, everyone's showing up. But unfortunately, he will not be there this year for a while, actually.
He was supposed to do a surprise performance at the Grammys last night, but apparently he dropped out.
Really? Did you watch the Grammys at all?
I had it on, but didn't really pay too much attention.
Yeah, it was. I didn't really watch the Grammys either, but yeah, I'm hoping maybe they'll do the same thing. But then again, I mean, I feel like if you're giving people the option to watch the Last of Us finale over the Oscars, I think people are probably going to choose the front, definitely, because.
Well, unlike the Super Bowl, haven't viewership for the Oscars been going down in recent years anyway? So like they probably are too concerned.
Until the slap heard around the world happened last year, then it spiked right up. But we don't. Too bad we can't get a wild card this year for the Oscars. It should be someone new every year. It's like, oh, who is going to snap this year? But yeah, hopefully. I mean, I don't know. The Oscars have been trying to, get that viewership up, and it seems that they're finally maybe putting the Oscars on Disney Plus. Because we had the announcements for the Oscars on there, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But we're here to talk about The Last of Us. I digress altogether. But was there any other non-spoilers thoughts that you guys had before we jump into the spoiler section?
Any thoughts on the new character, Kathleen? Brand new for the show.
I like her. So far, we've seen a little bit of her in episode 4, but I'm interested to see more. And the fact that she's mentioning Henry, we finally have more so of a connection of the group that Henry was with. But yeah, we'll kind of get into that for spoilers. But Mike, did you have anything else you wanted to mention before we do?
No, I think they did a great job. Just kind of like Devin was saying earlier. The emotional damage we felt last week, right? It's weird to say that this was the most lighthearted episode of The Last of Us we have gotten thus far and probably will ever get in this show. But Ellie cracking jokes was very welcome after everything that happened the last 3 weeks beforehand.
Yeah. I'm detecting a bit of a pattern where obviously the first episode of the season is a bit lengthier. It seems that like every other episode, they seem to be going a little bit longer than like normal runtime, because I believe episode 2 was around the same as episode 4, or it felt shorter, but that's just because we've had for episode 3, that was almost an hour and 20, when apparently it was almost like a 2-hour cut. They had to cut it down altogether. I was like, man, you can just make a movie with Bill and Frank of The Last of Us. But yeah, I'm wondering if I'm detecting a pattern here. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, this is definitely a shorter episode, but not a bad one by any means whatsoever. So with all that said, let's get into our spoiler section. So ladies and gentlemen, that is your first spoiler warning for episode 4 of The Last of Us again. That is your second spoiler warning for episode 4 of The Last of Us. So if you have not seen it, go watch it, because it's amazing. So there's a lot to talk about here, but I feel like just during the beginning, we get this little tough Ellie. She's acting a bit not uppity, but she has this confidence. Now she's got this gun. She's kind of just like, pew, pew, pew. Like, kind of just like a kid in the mirror. Like that, we see a little bit of the childness or a childhood kind of sort of forming with Ellie, where she's like, yeah, like I have a gun. Like, what you gonna do about it? And she's trying to like,
she feels that power. Yeah,
she feels that power. And, she grew up in the Fedra QZ. She kind of knows how to handle herself with a gun, but, this is like her first time ever having that free reign where she's like, yeah, like this wasn't given to me. I stole it and it's mine.
That's one thing I really love about Bella's performance too, right? Like just going to last week when she gets in the car for the first time, and like that childlike wonder in her eyes kind of peeks through, even though this world is extremely awful and like it's terrible for everyone. It's really great to see that amazement in her eyes sometimes, and have her be a kid, because she is like 14 years old. And so I think that's, again, why this episode just really works as a counter to what happened last week. We get to see the youthfulness of Ellie and how it is growing up in this world, whereas last week we kind of saw Bill and Frank persevere through the hardships of what this apocalyptic future became and how they adjusted to it, which I think is just a really fascinating like mirror between the two.
Yeah, and then that moment they have where he apologizes to her just because, like you said, she's just a kid in the apocalypse, and that's all her life has been, and it's a terrible life, and it's not her fault. And then she kind of has a breakdown of her own there.
Yeah, I did want to talk about that because it seems as if she is starting to mimic the personality of Joel, because when they do run into the group of people, so in the game, we know this already, but you know, when they're driving, when they finally have the car battery, in the game, they are actually headed to Pittsburgh, but they changed it to Kansas in the show. And so we run into these group of rebels, quote unquote rebels, and you know, things kind of just hit haywire. We finally start to see how gruesome and how unforgiving Joel can be, which is something I've been waiting for. But you know, it's a build-up. This is a TV show. You know, it's not just right off the bat where I think it was in the very beginning of the game where, no, actually that was not. I'm sorry. That's like way ahead. I can't say anything yet. I'm sorry. But Joel gets very violent, like very quickly. And you get to see what Joel is capable of. Like Ellie said in the first episode, what are Tess, RIP, and Joel capable of when it comes to, you know, this world, when it comes to them encountering other people. And we finally see, it may not play out the same way as it does in the game, but we see that Ellie saves Joel's life in a similar fashion, just in a different location. And they kind of, you know, change things around, which I really appreciated. But, you know, when he does kill I guess he was like maybe like in his 20s or whatever. He's like, I'm sorry. You know, like they were ambushed. And then he's trying to backtrack, saying like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, like we can be friends. And then Joel's like, I need you to go into that hole and I need you to stay there because what I'm about to do is not pretty.
Yeah, I like how they're humanizing the deaths. Like, it's obviously different from the game where you have to kill because it's a video game. It's what you're supposed to do. And there's not much of an emphasis on the actual humans that you're killing. So it's definitely a good change there.
Maybe in part 2, a little bit. I don't know. They try to make it to where, you know, the enemies call out each other's names and stuff, whatnot. But I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead. I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing.
Oh. Well, yeah, sorry, Devin, continue.
Yeah, I did hear about how in part 2 they kind of shout out names of the enemies that you've killed to kind of do the same effect. So it's good to see that they're doing that here.
Oh, that's right. Devin hasn't played part 2 yet. My gosh, I totally forgot. Yeah.
They need to release it on PC at some point.
He traded in the PS4 for a Steam Deck. That is a very valid reason altogether.
I got half off that Steam Deck, basically.
Ooh, you know what? Hold on. I still got my PS4 around here. I need to try and pull that trade off. That's a steal.
Hey, Mike, honestly, see what you can do, man. Because, you know, you never know. That's all I got to say. But,
but yeah, I really like, it's really fascinating, like you guys were saying, right? Seeing Joel in that moment, because he did not have to kill that kid. Right, like he was down, even though they did ambush him, he was the last one left and he was begging for his life.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just highlights the darkness that is also in Joel, because it's like he could have, like the kid couldn't move his legs. Even if you didn't kill him, you could have just left him there for someone to find him. Yeah. Right. And so the fact that he took him out tells us a lot about who Joel is and what these last 20 years have done to him.
And then there's also another very important moment with Ellie where you see a tear drop, like flow down her face after she does the shooting. Kind of shows a moment for her where she does care and she is empathetic, because the first couple episodes we were worried that she might have had some tendencies for some psychopathy or something with her actions, but she is sympathetic and empathetic, so that's good, at least for now.
She saw that clicker. She said, "No, listen here." I was like, "Whoa, Ellie, chill."
I mean, she did. I want everybody to remember she got infected, or at least bit, like 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So like, she's been through a lot by the time Joel meets her.
Yeah, she has definitely been through a lot, for sure. And I do agree with what Devin's saying. I was trying to figure out if it was, she does care for others, but she has to just harden up. Like, she sees how Joel is. She saw how Tess was. And she's like, they obviously know how smart she is as a 14-year-old. And she's like, I need to make it through. Because she knows how important she is, because we do know that she is immune. So she needs to, but also, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit, but it goes back to what Tess was saying. You're not immune from being like ripped apart. She's not immune from, killing either. So she's starting to develop this, I guess you could say, father relationship with Joel. Like, she's starting to see Joel more as a parent, more so than Marlene probably ever. But this is the person that she has been, I guess you could say, stuck with, but she's just trying to make the best out of the situation, which goes into the pun book. And I absolutely loved it. I loved her line delivery, and it, like Devin said, a little bit of deja vu from the games for sure, because those jokes are ripped straight out from the video game, but they come up in a more natural setting with the TV show, because in the game, you got to get those achievements, those trophies. Like, there's certain times where like you have to prompt Ellie to bring up the pun book, which we'll see hopefully later on, where she randomly got it from altogether. But yeah, I love how, I think Mike had said it, that this is like the quote unquote funniest or lighthearted episode. And when Pedro Pascal, man, he finally cracked a smile, which is what I really loved.
That was such a good moment.
Yeah.
Why did the Scarecrow get an award? That's the one that got him.
Because he was outstanding
in his field. And she was like, "I knew it. You know that one." But also towards the very end, where she was like, "Hey, Joel," she was like, "Do you know that diarrhea is hereditary? It runs in your genes."
Classic.
And it's like, it's so stupid that you can't help but laugh. And then Joel finally cracks a smile, probably for the first time ever, since that we know of, since his since he lost his daughter. I mean, I don't know if Tess made him laugh or whatnot, but they seem like a very serious couple.
Very true. Very true. I think it's funny how, like, throughout all of this, and I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but it's just to make a point. I think it's funny how, again, this is the most lighthearted and like calm episode, but we still have Joel kill a guy at gunpoint. We have them get ambushed, and then we have them again taken at gunpoint in their sleep at the end of the episode. Yeah. The world of The Last of Us, guys.
Yeah, it's just a quiet little 45-minute episode where all this crazy stuff happens.
Yeah, this is really where the parental, the unspoken respect that Joel and Ellie have for each other, because I really love how what they're doing with the show so far, where we get a little bit of a Chef Boyardee ravioli. I was like, oh man, I haven't seen this in TV show or movie in like ages. But when Joel and Ellie are in the middle of the woods, and Ellie is a bit worried that, hey, like, we're out here in the middle of the woods. She asks if they can make a campfire. He says no. He's like, oh, well, the infected see it. And then Joel says, no, infected aren't that intelligent, but it's people you have to worry about. And he makes sure that she's safe throughout the night. He grabs his rifle. He was about to go to sleep, looks at his rifle, and he's like, you know what? Joel has been everywhere, and we don't know everything that he's done, but this man has like street smarts beyond belief. He's like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep watching the entire night, and then it's that relationship starting to form, which is something that I'm glad that we're finally able to like see throughout this episode, and hopefully with Sam and Henry that appear at the end of the episode, because during the beginning of the episode we have Ellie pointing her gun at the mirror, and then the last shot is where you see Sam pointing a gun at Joel, and it's like, okay, that's like, imagine waking up and it's a child pointing a gun at your face, not an adult, a child. That's
and
wild.
shushing you.
Yeah, he's got that like war paint on too, which is interesting. I'm interested to see how they portray both of these characters in the show. Very excited,
especially since we had Joel be big brained, right, and have all that glass on the floor.
Yeah, Joel just had to like flop around in his sleep to switch to a side where the hearing is bad. Come on, Joel, do better.
Hey, he's a simple man, and he tries to get by.
That's again where it's like, that should be like a very shocking moment, but it is kind of just funny. It's like, dude, come on, we planned for this,
Yeah.
and they still got you.
Oh my gosh, that is probably, yeah, it's that gotcha moment for sure. But I wanted to hit a little bit of trivia facts here for episode 4. And
so did you guys notice we had a cameo from the video games in this episode?
we did, yes. Devin, do you know who it is? Wait, did you watch heavy spoilers today?
I did.
Okay, he probably already knows. But yeah, we do. It is the actor who plays Tommy in the video games. He's a part of the new rebellion group. I am blanking on the character's name. Is it
Okay, I didn't hear that part in the video, but he did look familiar.
Perry? Yeah. Perry, one of the main men of Kathleen, is played by Jeffrey Pierce, who gave his voice and motion capture to Tommy, Joel's brother, in the video game. And when I saw him, I was like, oh, is that him? Because his voice sounded so like, I was like, yeah, that's definitely him. And I was like, oh, well, that's pretty awesome. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool altogether. It's nice how they're incorporating, actors from the original game into this series, because it really shows how Neil Druckman has adored these actors, and they finally get to either play their TV counterparts or dive into a new role, which will not be the last from what we will see altogether. So yeah, it's some crazy stuff, which is pretty awesome.
Just wait till Troy Baker shows up. It's gonna be the ultimate Leonardo DiCaprio point at TV meme.
Yeah, Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson. Very excited to see both of them show up. And I'm wondering where Ashley Johnson's gonna appear, but I don't want. Yeah, but
I'm not gonna say anything, buddies.
Mike, come on, buddies. No. Yeah, so I'm there's two things I'm interested in. It's one, how are they going to incorporate Ashley Johnson into the show? And the second is later on, once we hit the winter chapter and certain events occur, but I don't want to get into, like, we're in spoilers, but people who are listening may not have played the game. So it's kind of like mid spoilers altogether. But yeah, I'm very excited to see where the journey goes. But so was there any other plot points or details you guys wanted to bring up before we get into our final thoughts and our ratings?
A couple of just like funny Easter eggs, I thought. I think it's funny how Ellie clearly had Frank's sleeping bag, which is just like, of course, it smells nice.
Yes.
And just Joel having coffee. One of the optional dialogue prompts in the game, they're in the hotel, right? I think they're in Pittsburgh. So it's the same sequence, different city. But they're in one of the hotels, and Joel sees a coffee machine. If you click the prompt, he just says, he like moans, "I really miss coffee." Because, of course, coffee's not a thing anymore because nobody is selling it. So I just think it's funny how they're still making a game reference because Bill and Joel do not have a great relationship in the video game. And it was really just get him the battery, get him the car, and get him out of here, right? Mm-hmm. But in this one, it's like Joel knows his way around Bill's place. So he just like raids the pantry and grabs Chef Boyardee. And he made sure he grabbed his coffee.
Hey, man. Bill was eating good for a while. Like he had an entire town to himself. Like it was great.
He probably had his own Blockbuster and everything.
Probably, man. Imagine. I wonder what kind of movies Bill was watching. You know, what kind of TV shows was he binging during his time? There's no way he was just staring at his security cameras the entire time. You know, just cooking rabbit and doing whatever else.
His entertainment was the infected just getting murdered by his little traps. He liked to watch that while he ate.
Yeah, and then knowing they had to go back out there and reset up the traps.
I mean, what do you think? Like, there's not much he can do. It's not like he was just watching The Office or Parks and Rec from his house, right?
That would be amazing if he was watching Parks and Rec. That would be
yes,
mind blowing.
Too meta.
What if that was like his like twin brother? Like, what if like Bill had like an
I have a brother from Pawnee.
I have a brother from Pawnee, identical twin. He's like, all right, Pete. You know what would be funny if the girl that Bill originally was with before meeting Frank was named Tammy.
Yes.
I'm glad you didn't do that now. Dang it.
What was her name? Tammy. or because he does mention his mother in the show as well in episode 3. He was like, "Oh, it's my mother Tammy's." It's like, oh, that would have been great. I would have absolutely loved that. But let's get into our final thoughts and ratings here. So I will pass it over to Mike so he can give his final thoughts and ratings. Then we'll go to Devin, and then I'll give mine, and then we'll close out.
Yes. This is just, again, another really good episode of television. It's not like world shattering like the first one or the third one, but it's very much a good kind of, not a reset, but it's more of a reintroduction, right, to what the story is. Bill got Joel what he needed. He got him the battery. He got him the car. Sorry if you hear my dog barking. I think the mailman's here. But they got the mission finally starts, right? Like we kind of thought that going into episode 3, but like this is officially Joel and Ellie's story. And I love how we're introducing new characters. We're introducing Kathleen, right? Who is an entirely new concept for The Last of Us, where it's like, okay, if you notice, episode by episode, we're meeting different people, going to different cities, going up against new villains, like, or obstacles, I should say. And I think that's really fascinating how in this arc, right, if we're bringing this into like anime or comic books, like this couple episode arc is where we meet Kathleen and her whole deal with Sam and Henry, and we don't even know what that is or who they are, what's going on with that. So I think it was just really cool setup to what I hope is, you know, fantastic payoff in episodes 5 and 6 going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree because, again, you know, episode 5 will drop on February 10th on Friday, 2 days before the Super Bowl, so that people can watch it throughout the weekend and then watch the Super Bowl. Because, I mean, but honestly, even if it was on Sunday, I probably would not have really watched the Super Bowl because I was kind of banging on the Bengals to get in. But you know what? It is what it is. But to me, it's a very uneventful Super Bowl altogether. Maybe people from Kansas who are Last of Us fans have something to root for now, but it is what it is. But Devin, what are your final thoughts? I'm sorry, Mike, what would you rate this episode? I do apologize.
If I were to rate it, it's, a solid 8 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Devin, what are your final thoughts and ratings on episode 4 of The Last of Us?
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. Definitely not mind-blowing by any means, but definitely a very necessary episode for all the character development that we got and just moving the plot forward to what we have in store for the future, which is very exciting. I'd probably give it like an 85, somewhere around there. Just a solid episode.
Yeah.
And a bit of a break from last week. Not too much, but a bit of a break.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a break. For mine, pretty much my initial reaction or final thoughts. Sorry, definitely mirror both of you guys. It's a great episode. I just love how we're finally able to have more alone time with Joel and Ellie. And when it comes to the game, it's like, okay, one cut scene, then you move to like a stealth scene, then you might get a little bit of action. This is probably the most action we've seen from this from the show so far, and it looks like from the previews for episode 5 it's gonna be a doozy. So I'm very, very excited it's gonna be great. Like Friday, finally we have something to look forward to on our Friday. But hey, I understand HBO has always released like their high profile shows at least on Sundays, though those are for the reserved good spots because it's the water cooler effect. But overall, I would probably just give this just like a 9 out of 10 for this episode altogether. I just, it was great to see Joel smile from a ridiculous
Nothing beats a Pedro
pun.
Pascal smile.
Yeah. And hey, we're getting more Pedro Pascal next month with The Mandalorian season 3.
I mean, we got a double dose of them this week with SNL,
Yeah,
Great
I did
stuff.
watch it.
yeah.
SNL, the Super Mario Bros. HBO coming soon, or Mario Kart, I should say.
Let's go. Definitely. But yeah, that concludes our review of The Last of Us episode 4. Again, that is titled Please Hold My Hand. So I'm going to pass it over to Mike. Mike, thank you again for coming on. So we love having you on. Let everyone know where they can find you on the internet and what you have coming up.
It is an honor being here with you guys. I love it. Love talking The Last of Us. It's funny because TLOU is the first YouTube video I have ever made. It's also the first episode of the Chatter After Brandon and I ever collaborated on. So it is a big part of my life and my career in this space, which is awesome. So it's great sharing that experience with you guys. But where you guys can find me, it's Novice Cinephile everywhere, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter specifically. If you want to check out our podcast, The Chatter After, that's on YouTube as well. And on Twitter, simply at The Chatter After. We cover The Last of Us every single Tuesday. So make sure you're there for the live streams. It's the Beyond the Clickers podcast every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern time. And one more thing. Next week, it's weird because HBO kind of screwed us over a little bit as far as our content creation. So the episode of Beyond the Clickers is going to be on Wednesday of next week because Monday and Tuesday of next week, we're covering Super Bowl trailers. So yeah, you guys get the episode
should be fun.
early.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys want to join us, you're welcome. But yeah, so next week, Beyond the Clickers on Wednesday, because those couple days we're going to be talking The Flash and whatever else comes out. Brandon is a huge Flash fan.
So still to this day, I 100% believe that you guys have the best name for a Last of Us podcast. Like, honestly, it's better than the HBO, like official, because the official Last of Us podcast is literally just called The Last of Us Podcast. And I've seen a few others out there where I'm like, it doesn't really work. I'm like, Beyond the Clickers, it's phenomenal. Like, job well done to everyone on your team, Mike.
Appreciate that. It's funny because Brett he came up with a better name for the official podcast, which is so funny. He's like, why didn't they just call it The Cast of Us? Because it's literally the cast and the creators of The Last of Us.
Literally, because it's Troy Baker who is interviewing. I haven't listened to this week's episode just yet, but yeah, that is very true. The Cast of Us.
It's like, yeah. And it's punny. Perfect for Ellie. Perfect for this episode.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I do love her pun book, though. It is amazing. It's fantastic. And with all that said, that is a wrap on today's episode. If you like what you heard on today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice, and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X to stay in the know. And always make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. And now let's take a sneak peek at what's coming up on the show in the coming weeks. Of course, we're going to be covering Last of Us, episode 5, once that drops, maybe before the Super Bowl. Really just depends on everyone's schedule. And you can also look forward to our Velma review, which I'm not sure if Devin has watched it. If not, totally understand. He's been under the weather, so I might just have to solo that one on my own, which is totally fine because I think I'm like the one person who actually likes the show. It's like me and Avengers Age of Ultron. I belong to like the 5% of people who actually like it. Jinkies. like Scoob. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So definitely keep a lookout for our Velma review. And I believe there's really nothing. Is there nothing coming up this week in the theater? Not that I know of.
I mean, the lucky few got to see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but I didn't.
We are going to be covering Ant-Man and the Wasp here on the show. I believe that will be next. I believe that's next week, Devin. I think it's on the 13th. I think it's the day before Valentine's Day, if I'm not mistaken. So we're definitely going to be having our review out for you guys for that. And what you can listen to now on the podcast, you can listen to our episodes 1 through 3 review of The Last of Us. You can also check out our Infinity Pool review that Devin and I covered together. And you can also check out our That 90s Show spoiler-free review that me and Amanda, aka AMX NDA Reviews, reviewed. So that was a lot of fun, and it got a season 2. So I'm very, very excited. It's just something fun and easy to watch. You don't have to take it seriously, but apparently some people do. Search around on the web for all that stuff. But I digress. Again, thank you to all of our listeners out there. And remember, if you enjoy the show, kindly leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And follow us on Twitter at FilmOptix to stay in the know. That was Devin, Mike, signing off. And my name is Christian, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace.
Adios.
Adios.